Hello everyone and welcome to Cinderful Gaming. In today's video we're going to take a look at getting started with the Ossiarch Bone Reapers Warband, the Teratic Cohort in Age of Sigmar Warcry. Today's video is sponsored by Gap Games, a fantastic miniature wargaming store in Queensland, Australia. They stock a wide variety of miniature wargames from all things Games Workshop to some of my personal favourites, Conquest, The Last Argument of Kings, and all things Modifius wargames as well. Use our affiliate code in the link below to help support both this fantastic store and the channel as well. First up, something new with Warcry is we now have battle traits for all of the factions. The Teratic Cohort has one option, as the Death battle trait does not affect any of the models in their warband, but what it does is Predatory Outriders. Before deployment, you can pick a friendly battle group that's not in reserve. Fighters from this battle group can deploy within 6 inch of their deployment point instead of 3, but if they do so, they must remain more than 6 inch from all enemy fighters. This is a pretty cool ability as it allows you just that extra little bit of deployment. You can sort of pair up your two different parts of your warband together if you've got nice and deployed near each other. I find this is a particularly good way to do that, to give you a really good sort of central part to your force, especially since you do have a few sort of smaller, weaker pieces in the Teratic Cohort. Next we have the reaction, and this can be used by all models with the Teratic Cohort rune mark. It's called Predatory Ravage, and a fighter with this Teratic Cohort rune mark can make this reaction after all damage points from an enemy's melee attack action have been allocated to them. The reacting fighter can make a melee attack action that targets the attacker, and when a fighter uses this reaction, you can discard a once saved wild dice. If you don't, you subtract 1 from your attacks and 1 from your damage points for each hit and critical hit, which is, a significant negative, especially since you do have quite a low amount of attacks on most of the models here, though your damage is pretty decent. I find sacrificing the wild dice to use this reaction is pretty good, and there are ways to get extra wild dice within this warband. It sort of works by gaining some wild dice during the game using your doubles, as we'll talk about in just a sec, and then sort of spending them in different ways. It's quite an interesting warband. And so the first fighter in our warband is our leader, the Kavalos Centauri. Now, this model is by far the best fighter in the warband. Quite a heavy hitter, decent amount of wounds and defense, and good movement there as well. It's got a large variety of different rune marks as well. They're going to give it access to a few abilities, though they do limit in particular ways as well. Now, first of all, it's got movement 7, defense 4, 20 wounds, that's nice, and in combat it has a 3-inch range, 5 attacks, strength 4 with 2/4 on damage, fairly solid offensive profile. Now, the rune mark wise, it does obviously have the Teratic Cohort. It's got leader, elite, and mounted. The mounted one obviously is going to be an issue because this stops it being able to potentially climb things, but nothing too major there, considering we do have other fighters that can do that part of the battle. Now, when we're looking into abilities, the first of these we have access to is Bestial Leaps. This fighter can make a bonus move action of up to 3 inch and can fly when they do so. When a fighter uses this ability, you can discard 1 of your saved wild dice. If you do, you can make a bonus move of up to 4 inch instead. So once again, another ability that just allows you to discard your wild dice, and this can be really good at like jumping over walls and barricades and stuff like that. Now, the next double we've got access to is a double that is available to the whole warband, and this is called Eyes of Catacross. You roll a number of dice equal to the value of the ability, and for each roll of a 5+, you add 1 dice to your saved wild dice. This ability, though, can only be used once per battle round. Next ability we have is Nadirite Strike. This is a double and can add 2 to the attack's characteristic of the next melee attack action made by this fighter, but when a fighter uses this ability, you can discard 2 saved wild dice, and if you do, you score 2 critical hits on a 5+ for that attack action. You then have Unleashed Rage, where 1 critical hit from your next melee attack action for a triple will generate an additional crit, and if you sacrifice 2 wild dice, you actually generate 2 additional critical hits. And lastly, we have Savagery Unbound, our warband's quad. Each friendly fighter with the Teratic Cohort rune mark in this fighter's battle group can make a bonus move action, and when a fighter uses this ability, you can discard 2 of your saved wild dice, and if you do so, each friendly fighter with the Teratic Cohort rune mark makes a bonus move action. These are a really wide variety of different abilities you have access to, a bunch of ways to really sort of increase the output. I really enjoy how this warband plays with the sort of generating wild dust and sacrificing them. It's an interesting mechanic and makes them quite fun. Next up, we have the Mortek Cycloptian with the Dread Glaive. This is one of two different variations of Mortek Cycloptian we're going to get access to, and you can build the models in the kit as both variations. So you could have two glaives, you could have two of the bidents if you wish to. Now, the model has a movement of 4, so fairly slow, is a defense 4 and 18 wounds, so then, you know, you sort of like your second in commands. Decent enough fighters. This model has a 1-inch range with 3 attacks at strength 5, 2, 4 on the damage. Now it does have access to quite a bunch of the same abilities as our leader, in fact all of the same ones, except it doesn't have the leader remark. So it's still got access to Bestial Leaps, Eyes of Catacross, Netherite Strike, Unleashed Rage and Savagery Unbound. All the exact same abilities we've just sort of gone over in the previous one, making it quite a versatile fighter and can sort of act in different ways and do different things depending on what you need it to. The alternative build for the Mortek Cycloptian is with the Netherite Bident. And it's got exactly the same sort of base stats for movement, defense 4 and 18 wounds, but it has a 2-inch range in combat with 3 attacks at strength 5, though it's 1/5 on the damage. This model does have a higher crit value, so it sort of spikes easier. This is definitely the one you maybe want to be using your Unleashed Rage on, because if you get that 6 with this, it turns into quite a bit of damage. Obviously only 1 damage on its regular hits, so is probably this particular one's downside, but the 2-inch reach is nice. You're relatively slow, so having that extra range when you're slow is useful, because it just means technically you've got an extra inch of movement there if need be. And like the previous Mortek Cycloptian, this one has exactly the same rune marks there as we've already talked about, and it's obviously missing the leader one from the Centauri. Next, we have the goodest boys in all of the Ossiarch Bone Reaper's force, and these are the Teratic Howlers. They've got a 4-inch move. This is relatively slow for a beast model, so it is something the Warband definitely struggles with, is movement. They're not fast at all in any way, except for your Cycloptian. They've got defense 4 though, and 10 wounds, so pretty decent there for a smallish sort of fighter. In melee, they have a 1-inch range attack with 3 attacks, strength 3 and 2/4 on the damage, so decent enough. And they've got the Beast rune mark there, as well as the Teratic Cohort rune mark. Now what this is going to do is this is going to allow you to use a triple called Artery Severing Strike, where a fighter can use this ability only if an enemy fighter has been allocated 1 more damage points by them, and until the end of the battle round, each time the enemy fighter makes a reaction or an action other than wait, you roll a number of dice equal to the value of this ability, and for a 2+, they allocate a damage point. So effectively can make an enemy suffer quite a bit of damage if you've got a nice high triple there. Other than that, you know, they're cheap, they bring some bodies to your force, they are beasts, so this stops them from being able to carry treasure, though they do count towards objectives. Lastly, we have our Aviarch Harpy. This is the second beast model we have, the little flying ones. They've only got a 5-inch move, though they do have the fly rune mark, which definitely helps. They are going to struggle to sort of do any mass sort of movement that they want. They've got the Beast rune mark, so Artery Severing Strike is there as well. And they've got a defensive 4, 10 wounds, same as the doggos. In combat, they are 1-inch range, 4 attack, strength 4, but they are 1/4 on the damage, so not quite as consistent damage as the doggos. They're a decent enough model, and I do like them. I do think the doggos, with their just sort of higher damage value, probably get a little bit more out of them. The fly rune mark on something so slow is not an awful lot better. You're better off sort of spending your doubles on Bestial Leaps and getting your heavy hitters like the Cycloptian into the fights than using the Aviarch Harpies, who are, you know, useful, but definitely not the best models in the Warband. And so the first ally we're going to look to bring in is the Mortison Bone Shaper. It's a fairly solid fighter with 4-inch move, defense 4, 20 wounds. It's got a short range but powerful shooting attack, a 3 to 7-inch range, 2 attacks, strength 3, 3, 6 on the damage. And in combat, it does have a 1-inch range, 3 attacks, strength 3, 1, 4 on the damage. Now the model does have the Trapper and Leader rune marks, and obviously the Ossiarch Bone Reaper one as well. This is going to give it access to a wide variety of different abilities. First of all, we've got Deathly Prowess as a reaction that it can use. We can make this reaction after they're targeted by a melee attack action, and if each hit from that attack action results in a miss. You allocate 5 damage points to the attacking fighter. Netherite weapons is an ability you'll be able to use as well. Until the end of this fighter's activation, you can add 1 to damage points allocated by hits and critical hits. And then you've also got the Unstoppable Advance ability as well. This is a triple, can only be used by your Ossiarch Bone Reaper leaders, and until the end of the battle round, you add half the value of this ability to the move characteristic of friendly fighters in the same battle group. This is really cool because obviously you are relatively slow with this warband, so getting some extra movement on your stuff is really nice, which I find great. And then you've got the Bone Shaper's Art as well, which is a triple that allows you to remove up to D3 damage points allocated to each friendly fighter within 6 inch. Getting some healing into this warband when you are relying on, say, 3 particular pieces from the original box set to really deal your damage is incredibly important. I think this really helps the models sort of survive. The next fighter we're going to look at is the Krulgast Crusader. I think this brings a decent fighter to the warband, another good sort of source of some real damage. You've got a 205 point model here with a movement of 6, a fly room monk, so faster than anything you've got in your warband. Defense of 4, 25 wounds. You've also got that leader room mark there as well. There's no sort of additional Nighthaunt abilities it's going to really bring to your force, but it does have a ranged attack that can be used in combat as well, and range is definitely something we lack in the warband, so that's why I think the Crusader can be interesting. 4 attacks at a strength 4 with 1/4 on the damage is decent enough. It's, on par with most of your sort of fighters in your warband, but it's also got, its generic sort of Nighthaunt abilities. It's got Flickering Form, where it can potentially redeploy and move itself between enemies when they're charging. Aura of Dread allows you to pick a visible enemy fighter within a number of inches equal to the value of the ability, and then until the end of the battle round, subtract 1 from the strength, so it's got a cool little debuff. And then you've also got the ability of Spectral Summons. This is where it's really going to get interesting, because this allows you to bring back friendly fighters that have been taken down. Incredibly important when you've got powerful fighters. Now, you also remove a number of damage points allocated equal to the value of the ability, so they're not going to come back at full strength, but definitely getting, another attack action, maybe out of something like your cycloptians, can be really, really useful. And lastly, we have the Vampire Lord. The Vampire Lord for me is a great fighter to bring into your force. First of all, the Call of the Crimson Feast ability is going to be really where I think all the power comes in. This is a powerful ability that until the end of the battle round allows you to add 1 to the attack characteristic of melee attack actions made by visible friendly fighters within 6 inch. You've also got the Unfeeling Flesh as a reaction, where you subtract 1 from the damage points allocated by each hit and critical hit, and Thirst for Blood as well allows you to heal your vampire. It's a pretty decent fighter in there with stats you would expect to see on a vampire, and also it has the Fly Room mark as well, which is nice, allowing it to sort of move quickly around the battlefield. I think where we're looking at, this particular model is going to add a bit more punch. The Crusader is going to provide you with a bit of summoning back, and the Bone Shaper that we've talked about is going to provide you with a bit of healing. And so our list today is going to have our leader as the Cavalos Centauri. This is going to have the Divine Blessing of Savagery. This means its critical damage value is going to be increased by 1. And then we've also got the Mortis and Bone Shaper, who I do think the healing is probably the most important. The Crusader or a Nighthaunt character is nice, but you then need the Bone Shaper on top of that. So you're really losing a lot of points in there, and I don't think you have them spare when you're looking at your Centauri and your Cycloptians. Fighter-wise, we do have our Cycloptians, both with a Dread Glade and Netherite Biter. They can go down whichever route you feel is best, because they're exactly the same points. And then we have 3 Teratic Prowlers. Splitting them up into battle groups, I think the Centauri goes with one of your Mortek Cycloptians. Battle Group 2 would then be a Mortek Cycloptian, whichever one you want, and one of your Teratic Prowlers. And lastly, we have Battle Group 3, which is our Mortis and Bone Shaper and 2 Teratic Prowlers. Giving the most fighters around the Bone Shaper means we're going to get to use all that movement ability we have with the Ossiarch commands, and then we're going to also have fighters that maybe need its healing more immediately next to it. We hope that this video was helpful in getting you started with Warhammer Age of Sigmar Warcry, and that it was able to give you some ideas and inspiration to start your own force in the game. If you have any other questions at all, please comment them down below and we'll endeavour to get back to you. And while you're there, don't forget to drop a like, subscribe and join our Discord server as well, linked in the video's description, for all our future Warhammer Age of Sigmar Warcry content.